The California gold rush lured most of his passengers to the west. After the travelers came ashore in San Francisco, Captain Flavel continued to sail north to Portland to deliver the rest of his cargo. It was during this trip that Flavel first saw Astoria and the Columbia River. Sensing opportunity in Astoria, Captain Flavel became captain of the steamship Gold Hunter that carried various goods between Portland and San Francisco. Over the next year, the young sea captain became familiar with the Columbia River and the deadly sandbars at its mouth. On December 9, 1850, George Flavel wrote a letter to the governor and commissioner of pilots of the territory of Oregon, requesting a branch license to establish a business of piloting ships on the Columbia River.
Gentlemen, having carefully examined the Columbia and Willamette rivers and being acquainted with all the bars, shoals, and various depths of the water on the rivers, together with my experience as a navigator, I take the liberty of presenting myself to your honorable board as a candidate for a branch to pilot on the above rivers, to all the intermediate parts between the mouth of the Columbia and the head of navigation on both above-named rivers. I remain, gentlemen, yours respectfully, George Flavel.
Within days after sending this letter, Captain Flavel received the first branch license on the Columbia and Willamette rivers, issued in the territory of Oregon. Though his branch license allowed him to pilot ships on both rivers, Flavel confined his services to leading cargo and passenger ships through and around the sandbars at the mouth of the Columbia River. The Graveyard of the Pacific, as the bar was known, had already claimed many ships and the lives of many men that tried to pass through it. Captain Flavel's bar piloting business was dangerous work, and he frequently faced treacherous seas and shifting sandbars. In 1854, 4 years after receiving his branch license, George Flavel, then 30 years of age, married Mary Christina Bowling, who was only 14 years old. Mary came from a large German family that traveled from Ohio to the west coast along the Oregon Trail when she was 8. The Bowlings were one of the earliest families to live in Astoria, arriving in 1847. Mary's parents, Conrad and Philippina Bowling, owned and operated a small boarding house on the river, where Mary first met Captain Flavel. The couple's first home was located on the southeast corner of 8th Street, directly across the street from where they later built their mansion. George and Mary had 3 children, a son, George Conrad, and 2 daughters, Nellie and Katie. George Conrad followed in his father's footsteps and served on many ships at sea. He eventually married and had a family of his own. Nellie and Katie learned all of the social refinements and graces expected of young ladies in the Victorian era. Though the sisters never married, men frequently called upon them and escorted them to picnics, operas, dances, and church services. Both young ladies excelled in their own musical talents. Nellie was an accomplished pianist and organist, and Katie was a noted soprano singer. Both daughters studied and performed in San Francisco and Paris. In Astoria, they gave performances for the benefit of the Presbyterian Church and the local temperance society. Despite Mary Flavel's young age when she married, Mary quickly assumed her role as the wife of one of Astoria's more prominent citizens. She often attended church services, prayer meetings, and gave generously to a number of charitable causes. Mary was a modest woman who managed her household well.
Where she was mistress, there was a perfectly kept home.
By 1858, George Flavel had amassed enough money to retire from the daily hazards of bar piloting on the Columbia River. Though he still continued to manage the piloting branch from his office downtown, he was actively involved in a number of other business ventures, with substantial success. One of Captain Flavel's most profitable investments was the purchase of the barkentine, the Jane A. Falkenberg. Flavel took command of his ship for 2 years, beginning in 1861. Setting a new record for the fastest voyage between San Francisco and Astoria, just 3.5 days. To aid in his shipping business, Flavel expanded his docks in Astoria and built a new warehouse on the waterfront. He built the Occident Hotel for the convenience of passengers en route to Portland or San Francisco, the finest in town. During the 1870s, Captain Flavel held official positions in local government as city councilman, school board director, and as county treasurer. He owned the city's first fire engine and was later recognized for his contributions to the local fire department and for helping them to obtain much-needed equipment and supplies. A decade later, Captain Flavel expanded into the banking business when he became co-founder and president of the First National Bank of Astoria. By 1879, Astoria had grown to nearly 6,000 people. It became a bustling river town with new homes and businesses sprouting up all over town. By 1885, Captain Flavel's influence on the community could be seen on almost every street corner in Astoria. With business interests in shipping and development cleverly managed, he quickly became Astoria's wealthiest man.
If every dollar in Astoria was divided equally among every male in town, in 6 months or a year at most, Captain Flavel would have most of it, and you'd be working for him, and so would I. And what's more, it would all be done fair and square.
Through it all, bar piloting on the Columbia River remained his steadiest investment. After 35 years, Captain Flavel planned to retire, but not before he built a new house to reflect his life's achievements. In 1884, Captain Flavel hired a German-born architect by the name of Karl White to design his new house. Much time was spent in planning the home, with construction beginning in 1885 and continuing on until the next spring. The fir, cedar, and redwood used to frame and clad the building likely came from the northwest forests. The house was built in the Queen Anne style with stick elements, popular in the Victorian era. It has an asymmetrical facade, a one-story wraparound porch, large amounts of ornamentation, cast iron cresting, textured shingles, and a stained glass window. The 4-story octagonal-shaped tower offered the captain an excellent 360-degree view of the river and town. The construction of his 11,600 square foot house cost the captain $36,000. He spared no expense in fitting the house with all the modern conveniences of the late 19th century, such as central heat provided by a wood-burning furnace, and indoor plumbing with hot water and flushing toilets. The 9-foot fir doors and East Lake-style surrounds and wainscoting were grain-painted by craftsmen to resemble rich hardwoods like mahogany, cherry, and burl rosewood. The captain purchased different hardwood mantles for the 6 coal-burning fireplaces from Portland. It took plasterers just over a month to complete their work on the interior of the house, which included the walls, 14-foot-high ceilings, medallions, and the cornice moldings. In 1886, Mary, Nellie, and Katie traveled to San Francisco to buy furnishings for the house. They bought Axminster carpets, Smyrna rugs, portieres, and fine lace curtains. While they were away, Mary often wrote to her younger sisters, Sophie and Eliza, seeking their help and voicing her concerns about the building of the house and the surrounding gardens.
Mr. Like says that the raspberry bushes must be moved. I wish some of you would advise him, as he may not know. And the captain knows nothing about such things, and Mr. Like only cares for the house. I do hope they won't spoil the trees. They can fill in behind the house and leave the front alone until some other time.
The stick-style carriage house was completed in 1887 and housed the captain's carriage and stalls for his 3 horses, Buckskin, Tilly, and Chance. Captain Flavel enjoyed only 7 years living in his retirement home before he retired. On July 3, 1893, Captain Flavel died of pneumonia in his bed at the age of 69.
The sad news of the passing away of Captain George Flavel last Monday evening cast a gloom over this entire community, but he was known to almost every man, woman, and child, and highly esteemed and beloved by all. Astoria will miss Captain Flavel.
At the time of his death, Captain Flavel's cash, stock, and other real estate holdings added up to $750,000. The majority of his wealth was divided between his wife and 3 children. but a small portion was willed to the First Presbyterian Church for the construction of a new house of worship, which was built in 1903. After the captain's death, Mary, Nellie, and Katie spent much time traveling around the world. They typically spent their winters in San Francisco and returned home to Astoria for the summer and for holidays when they were not abroad. In 1910, Katie passed away at home in Astoria. She was 46 years old. 18 years later, Mary Flavel died peacefully in her bedchamber at the age of 88. After the death of Nellie Flavel in New York in 1933, the captain's oldest great-granddaughter, Patricia, became owner of the Flavel house. Less than a year later, she gave the property to the city of Astoria as a memorial to her family. The county began using the house as offices for the Red Cross and the Public Health Department. In the late 1940s, plans were being made to tear down the house to make a new parking lot for the nearby courthouse. Members of the Clatsop County Historical Society and other concerned citizens quickly stepped in to save the house from demolition. In 1951, the key to the Flavel house was given to the Historical Society for use as a history museum. Today, the Clatsop County Historical Society has full ownership of the Flavel property and is dedicated to preserving and to interpreting the historic importance of this house for the public. The house is being carefully restored to its original condition. Captain George Flavel was a significant force in the development and growth of Astoria in the second half of the 1800s. His piloting service across the bar and his contributions to the development of the city expanded trade and commerce in this part of the Northwest and set the stage for future progress.